Hi there, it's Mr. Clark. Welcome to lesson MED.4.3 on Pre-Franconian notation. So we've been looking at modal rhythm, which we start to see around 1175 and lasts until around 1225, depending on what region, what manuscript you're looking at. And we will be transitioning in the next lesson to Franconian notation. But in the middle, from about 1225 to 1260 or so, you see this kind of evolution of modal rhythm before Franconian takes off. So we're referring to it as Pre-Franconian notation. We get to breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief because it takes the system that we've been learning of modal rhythm and makes it a little less ambiguous, a little easier to transcribe. So there are three main manuscripts that we see this notation in from this time period: the Codex Montpellier, the Codex Bamberg, and this manuscript from the British Museum. So one of the main issues in modal rhythm was determining which notes are longas and which notes are breves, which for a system of rhythmic notation, when you only have two rhythms, that's you kind of want to know the difference. So the notes now have distinct shapes, at least when notated individually. Ligatures are more. Longa has a stem. Brevis, no stem. Okay, we can also have an even longer note known as the duplex longa. That is usually twice as long, hence duplex, and it has a rectangle with a stem. So that's exciting. Not sure why this image is so big. I guess because we're just excited that we can now more easily distinguish longas and breves. So, yeah, the presence of duplex longas is inconsistent even within a single manuscript. But with distinct shapes for the longa and brev, we can begin to interpret some rhythms outside of the standard modes. These rules will help. Rule 1. If there are two longas in a row, the first longa is perfect. As a reminder, that means equal to 3 brevs. A longa is imperfected, made equal to 2 brevs, by a single following or preceding brev. So if a longa is followed by 1 brev or preceded by 1 brev, it's probably going to be imperfect. If there are 2 brevs between 2 longas, like right here, the second brev is doubled. That's that alteration we were talking about. In some manuscripts, a little stroke divides perfections or groups of 3. So if we wanted to be very clear that, like, this is a group of 3, we could put some strokes around it. So here are some examples of the applications of these rules. First off, we have 2 longas, so the first one is going to be 3 for sure. Here, we have 2 brevs between 2 longs, so by rule 3, the second brev is going to be doubled. So our rhythm here is da, 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 da. You may recall that in the previous section with modal rhythm, we were notating 6/8 because the longa got the beat. Now, the brev usually gets the beat at a tempo of approximately 120 beats per minute. Again, some scholarly disagreement on that. And as I wrote in the footnote, a matter of great consternation among historical music theorists. But this is what we'll do. So here we have a longa and then 3 brevs and a longa. So this is pretty straightforward, where we can just make those into a perfection. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. That one's pretty straightforward. Here's another example. We have now 4 brevs between 2 longas. So we can go back to rule 4, where a longa is imperfected by a single following brev. So we can say, okay, this brev imperfects this longa, and then we have a group of 3, and then we can end. 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Here, we have that little stroke saying, no, you can't do that, because this is a perfection all by its onesie. Great, okay. So then we figure we have a group of 3, makes a perfection, and then this brev is going to imperfect this longa. 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Also, in addition to clarifying the longa and the brev, we get a new note. It's the semi-brev. So now we have a diamond note head. And something that I have learned is that I'm really bad at drawing diamonds. Like, I have 1, 2, 3, and then like that last side never wants to connect up, and it does weird things. So maybe if I draw them in a different way, yeah, going clockwise works better than Widdershins, but I'm not trying to do this. This is not a bit. This is just me being bad at drawing Widdershins diamonds. So anyway, the semi-brev, you never see one of them. They never travel alone. Strength in numbers, specifically groups of 2 or 3. So, as best as we know, 2 semi-brevs would fit evenly into a brev, and then when there are 3, the last one is double the length of the first 2. So if you see 2 semi-brevs, it would be 1D, 2D, 3D, 1D, 2D, 3D. Here would be 1D, 2D, 3D. There are some theorists who will say, no, this should be divided evenly into a triplet, but then you get weird polyrhythms going on, and it seems unlikely that medieval musicians would have wanted that. So that's how we're going to transcribe it for now. We've also upgraded our ligatures. Ligatures are in an intermediate state between modal rhythm and Franconian notation, coming in the next section. So don't worry about memorizing this, just use this handy reference table. And the modern transcription might be different depending on whether the ligature takes up 1, 2, or 3 brevs of time. So unhelpfully, the current formatting of the Google Doc has the title, or the header row, separate from the rest of the table. But 1 brev, 2 brevs, 3 brevs. So these are different shapes of ligatures that might mean different things depending on their context. So you get some fun shapes that we haven't seen before where you just have a diagonal slash. You have a rectangle and then a square, or a rectangle and then a square. So again, just consult this table. And when there are multiple examples, they all mean the same thing. So before, if you wanted 2 notes where one is you have a lower note and then a higher note, you would always notate it like that. You still can, but this is now a different way to notate that could mean a different thing or reduces ambiguity. This will never take place over 3 brevs or 1 brev. This could only mean 2 brevs right next to each other. So you get some even funkier shapes down here. And you can take a look and use that. Plica ligatures are rarer. Single plicas are more common. Plicas usually look like this. You have the plica longa, so if it's going up, and the plica longa if it's going down, where the longer stem stroke would be on the right side, which continues to work how they have been. And a plica brevis would break down into 2 semi-brevs. So it's a short plica and a long plica. Short plica has the long dash on the left. The Codex Bamberg also uses precise notation for rests, which is great. The length of the dividing bar determines the length of the rest. So this would be a semi-brev, a brev, 2 brevs, or an imperfect longa, and 3 brevs, or a perfect longa. So most of the pieces in these codices that use this notation are 3-voice motets, generally written so that all 3 singers could perform from a single book, which means that each page starts and ends at the same place for each singer, which gives you handy points of, well, I know that this note happens the same as these because it's the start of the page for each voice. That gives you some clues. Depending on the manuscript, even line by line it might match up, which if that is the case, great, that really helps. Tenors are often still grouped in ligatures, and this will help with some common groupings. So if you have a group of 3, could be mode 1, 2, or 5, you have 1, 1, and then 3, could be 1, 2, or 5, and then you can look at that table on your own. For the first 2 rows of the table, it's not super useful. Look at other hints. If ligatures are broken due to repeated notes, check out whether the broken note is a brevis or a longa, because they have distinct shapes now. Check the length of the tenor versus the upper 2 parts. If it's about the same length, the tenor is probably in mode 1 or 2. If the tenor is much shorter, it's probably in mode 5, because that moves more slowly. It only has 3 notes for like 6 notes of the upper. It's about half as many notes. Check to see what mode the upper part's in. Mode 1 and mode 2 don't occur at the same time. They would conflict with each other. Mode 1 doesn't occur at the same time as mode 3, since the rhythms again conflict. If there are clear rests, this is also super helpful. So these are our disclaimers of like, these are the rules, but also it's still ambiguous, so like check out these things, that might help. enjoy Pre-Franconian notation, and I'll see you next time.